So we might kick off while we're waiting. So thanks, everyone. And it's good to have you back. I wonder, just before we dive in, if there's any reflections about last week's content or discussion. We were talking about managing emotions. Has anyone had any experience of that over the past week, or any questions or thoughts occurred to us? Anything we want to share or ask? I'm sure you've been deeply poring over the content of this webinar for the last 7 days.
Stuart, I might just say it was an insight to dig into the topic a bit more and appreciate that emotion is it's information. It's not necessarily like a bad thing. There's lots of things we can do to manage it well. It's not something to be, I don't know, afraid of. I guess that was something that was in my head. So I found that session very helpful.
Oh, good. That's great. Well, thanks for that. Anyone else? Otherwise, we might dive into today's content and remove that now. All right, very good. So, well, that's great, Colin, and it is an important issue, and I'm glad we were able to help there. So today, it was this one about getting outcomes, which can be difficult, can't it? Last week, I was facilitating a one-day session down in Canberra, ACT public sector. It's quite a mixed team. We had 40 people in the room, so quite a big group, and we were trying to land on that task of doing the vision and the mission, and how do you get 40 people to agree on a thing when the strongest drive in the human is the drive to edit someone else's text. That's always quite a challenge to get to that point. So it's a real challenge all the time, isn't it? How do we get outcomes when there's differences in the room, and there's how do we wrangle that and land somewhere so the conversation is productive? As always, we'll be working on the whiteboard, so I'm just going to share that with us now. And I can pop a link into the chat if that's helpful, but I'll share it. I think I will just share it here, and hopefully that will give us all access to that. Bit slow. Yep. So that's all good. Do we need a copy in chat, or are we okay with that whiteboard? Can we see it? Yep, you're in.
Good for me. Yep.
All right. Good. So we can see down the bottom row today's session. I didn't change the date anyway. Across at the end, we've got the topics we're kicking off, and today is about getting outcomes and resolutions. So to get us started, and as a sort of example of the sorts of things we might be talking about as a kind of tactic for doing this, I'd like us to just share a little bit of what we see is the problem or the challenge. Peter talked a little bit to it last week, but what does make it hard to get outcomes, to find resolution in the space when you're facilitating? And so just a couple of post-it notes here, like, is it the time pressure, or is it differences of opinion, or is it just not, what makes it difficult? What's part of the challenge or dilemma of getting people to outcomes when you're facilitating groups? We might move on. So there's a bit of a theme there. I've sort of loosely, grouped those together. Ensuring the heart of the issue is made visible, being able to draw out the key issues, and needing time to understand the differences. So there's how do we know what's important and what is the most important, the key issue to be working on. And also there's a second theme through that one, isn't it, which is how to do all of that under constant time pressure. Anyone want to add anything to that? Have I captured or miscaptured or summarized what you're saying there? Okay. So does someone want to speak then to strongly held positions? What's the challenge there?
That was me. It's when people enter the room, impersonal, virtual, and in their mind they've arrived at what they want the outcome of the process to be, and they hang on to that for dear life, and trying to help those people to come to a shared outcome rather than the one which might be a little different to what they find when they walk in.
So finding ways to have people letting go a little bit when they're walking into the room already with the answer or something. Yeah, absolutely. That's a pretty common dynamic for sure. And genuine engagement online. Anyone want to just speak to that?
That was me again. I'm a quick typer. That's just the classic. There's so many distractions on a screen when people are online, and we've talked about that before. How do you keep people engaged and snap them back to what you're doing together?
Yeah, okay. So there's a couple of things there. Strongly held positions. How do we manage people when they walk into the room and they've got the answer and they're hanging on to that? And our task through that time together is to find a way where we let go of our individual positions and find some common ground or common way forward. The hybrid or online thing, I'll come back to that one in a sec. And this one about knowing what is it that we're really wanting to tackle. That's sort of the key things that I'm seeing emerge there. And then all of them, kind of the time thing sits over all of them. Is that fair to say? There's always a time pressure. The hybrid one, we've got a whole topic where we might set aside the discussion around that hybrid or online world. So we might sit that one aside, Peter, for now. Would that be? And I'm sure everything that we discussed today will be relevant to that anyway. But as a topic to tackle, what I might do now then, I think with those, there's kind of two ideas there. How do we get to the heart of the matter when everyone's seeing things differently? How do we know what's important to tackle? And how do we deal with we all walk in with opinions? Two things. So what I might do is pop you into two breakout rooms, and each room might just take a look at one of those issues. So one is, how do we cope with that strongly held opinion thing? And the other is, how do we get to know what's on? And I would like you, I'll give you, 5, 10, maybe 7 or 8 minutes. And when we come back together, I'd like just some thoughts, some not answers, but potential hypotheses, I guess, how I've seen it done, how I would like to see it done, what seems to have worked. Dev.
Hey, Stuart, I was just wondering if before we do the breakout rooms, I would like to request if we could just get a little bit more of a sense of why that first one's a problem, the strongly held positions.
Sure.
Whoever wrote it or anyone, it'd be nice to just have that framing to then discuss.
What do you think, Dev, about that? What's your sense of why that can be a challenge, or when have you seen it be a challenge for you or other people?
I've only seen it being a challenge when there is a there is assumption that strongly held. Could you go back to that sticky note, please?
Sure.
Oh, actually, I can probably do that for
That's
myself as well.
Yeah.
Just following you. That strongly held positions and predetermined desired outcomes are in conflict with other strongly held positions and predetermined desired outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes strongly held positions and predetermined desired outcomes are the right positions and outcomes, and you don't know that until you explore it. So I don't necessarily see it as a problem, challenge, or dilemma. I just see it as a characteristic of facilitation. But I've suddenly noticed it feeling like a problem or a challenge or a dilemma to be managed. So, so I'm not challenging the notion that it is a problem, challenge, dilemma. I just want to understand other people's perspective to empathize with that better.
Mm-hmm. Peter, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah. So for me, I can think of specific situations I've been in where that's been a challenge. And it's not necessarily about what happens in the room during the facilitation, it's about what happens afterwards. So if you have a group of people that are working together on a challenge to come to a solution, and some of those people have a very strong position on what they believe the solution to be, when that is not the solution that is developed by the group, those people I've seen it happen where those people will undermine the delivery of the solution after the session. So it's not just about, it's kind of about the outcome that you're trying to achieve and making sure it endures beyond the facilitation itself. And so for me, if we can crack that nut in the facilitation and help those people open their mind, because they could be fantastic ideas, but they might be difficult for others to go along with for whatever the reasons might be. So you could have the best idea in the world. If you can't bring the group that are doing it together along on your idea, it may as well not exist. So you have to come up with a thing that everyone can buy into and contribute to and take on the next leg of the journey. So it's that for me. How do we, and they are usually the smart, deep thinkers in the room that have those strong positions, and they can then work very hard to push their barrow afterwards. And that's something I would like to be able to grease the wheels of through facilitation.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome nuance. Thank you.
Yeah, and I've certainly encountered often working on quite complex problems that people walk into the room thinking they have the answer, but given the complexity and the range and the diversity that no one really has the answer because no one really is seeing the full problem. So I have a pretty strong belief that walking in with the answer often is to do a disservice to the complexity and richness and holistic nature of the problem and all those perspectives that we're excluding if I'm still sitting on my problem. So I think that's an important dynamic to help me let go of where I'm sitting. Yeah, Adrian.
A lot more. Yeah, I resonate with that, and I think one symptomatic issue is that we're really starting to see, for example, in really intractable problems that we have to deal with, right? There is a high degree of polarization going on, and doesn't help as social media does push people to the fringes even more, right? And you get even more polarized. And the sad thing is that sometimes you're polarized based on information, but disinformation. And I think somebody mentioned about open mind, having an open mind coming into it. So I think one of the really important things for a facilitation to really be effective is that acknowledging that we all come and bring in our biases, our cognitive, skews and stuff like that, and to just come in with this idea that look, we don't have all the information. We're trying to have as much information, but we need to, acknowledge that, because if not, when we come with closed minds, I will find that it tends to be that your philosophical leanings will get in the way of really being able to come up with solutions. And as Rose says, you end up, I'm sorry, Peter, you'll end up just having people who are not engaged and were still not even supportive. So having that openness of mind is really important. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. We have an exercise or a little tool called Minds Made Up, which specifically goes there and allows people to say, well, here's what I really think strongly about this, and then to just park that aside as an attempt to firstly name it that we're walking in with our minds made up, and B, allow us to let it go. So that's something I can share after this webinar, in fact. All right. So we've got two issues. One is that one we've just talked about. What is the challenge of coming in predetermined? The other is, how do we know what's the important discussion? How do we find the time, and what's the process for getting to the gold, the thing we really need to talk about when it's not always clear? So I'm going to pop you into two groups and have a discussion, unpack that a little bit more, and then think about, well, what can work, what might work, what have I seen work, what have I done that's worked? And when we come back, we're going to pop a few more post-it notes about some strategies, actions, and tactics. Then we'll have a talk about those. And if there's time, I might share a couple of frameworks that can be useful here. All right, that's kind of the plan ahead. Okay, so breakout rooms. And if you don't mind, just for the ease of making this happen, I'll pop you into two rooms. And so room 1, Cindy, Colin, Peter, just because, why not do the purple one about that strongly held positions, minds made up. Room 2, Dev, Michaela, Adrian, that other group there about getting to the heart. Is that okay? Are we clear enough on the discussion coming up? All right, I'll give you between 5 and 10 minutes to do that. I'll send you away now. Cheers. And can someone please remind me to put the recording back on when we come back? All right, welcome back. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
I jumped into one just briefly, but my camera does funny things when I do that, so I jumped out again. So I wouldn't mind just allowing you to see if there's any insights from that worth sharing. I've got two headers here on my second frame here, and maybe some sticky notes under ideas under this strongly held position one, and any ideas, and happy to talk more about that. But if there's anything obvious that's emerged from that conversation, then pop them in there, and that'll be grist to the mill. All right. Is there any there that catches someone's eye and says, "Oh, can you talk a little bit more about that?" Or, I like that. Can we explore that a little deeper? Anyone you want to ask about there? So the circle way. What's the circle way? Cindy, is that?
I put that down. Justin, we've got a little group of practitioners here on the Sunshine Coast around Circle Way, and I'm happy to share some resources because I probably won't do this justice, but I guess there's a whole process and structure around Circle Way practice, and I guess it's around facilitating conversation in a circle, and it's where everyone has equal voice in that. and it's around an opportunity to, I guess, come together and share perspectives. And it's a really safe and respectful way of doing that. It's a structured process that's around, I guess, being really open-minded and listening. So it's around check-ins and agreements. There's like a talking piece that helps to designate who can speak. I guess the process in it is that you're all equal in that in those conversations, and you're tending to the well-being of each other and to the circle. It works really well in some processes, particularly around getting to know each other, and particularly when there are, I guess, you know, that there's diverse perspectives and understanding around topics. I guess the battle that is around, I guess, allowing time for that process, and I guess having being allowed to do it, to step into a process with people is a bit of a challenge that we have here.
Very good. And you find that, just briefly, it helps do what in the context of these two challenges, Cindy, the strongly held positions or getting to the key issues?
The strongly held positions, yeah. So like I said, and I guess it's a really opening to get to know each other, get to understand. Is a safe way to share those strong positions, and just doing it in a really, I guess, safe and respectful environment. Noting that there's a process and structure around the facilitation, so that you are tending to the well-being of each other and the circle as a whole. So it allows that openness. So it's yeah, and it's just about being equal. So it's I'm not coming in as Cindy from Sunshine Coast Council. I'm coming in as Cindy into the circle to share, if that makes sense.
Yeah, good. All right, very good. Thank you. That does sound, any of those processes that invite equality and listening and sharing of how I'm feeling and how I'm thinking about this. They're all really constructive conversations. That's all we're really trying to do here as facilitators, isn't it? Well, it's a big chunk of what we're trying to do, is have each other listen to each other. And so that sounds like a great process. The orange one, have the strong position holders share their position, explore what it's based on. Can someone just tell me a little about that one?
That was me again. I've got this I don't have answers, I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm interested in as I was saying earlier, in how you get those people who believe they have the answer and want to influence the world to their solution, how you encourage them to open their mind and explore where their position is coming from, and perhaps see that maybe there are other perspectives which could lead to other ways.
Yes. Look, I have found that the second part of that to be quite important, and you've heard me tell these stories 100 times, Peter. Get in the room and someone says, here, there's a yellow one. What's the primary question we're trying to answer? And I think these are all so connected. I ask that question, and if you've got 40 people in the room, you'll probably get 40 different answers and get them up on the wall. And that to me is a really solid start in helping me let go of my position, because other people have got quite different questions around this. There are different issues that I haven't even thought of. So that seems to me like perhaps my answer isn't the whole answer after all, despite the fact I walked in very confident that I'm the expert around here and I've got the answer. Maybe I haven't seen this whole picture, and maybe there are other things there that I was missing.
And that's a really good reminder, Stuart, that so in facilitations I've been involved with in more recent times, a few of us have been taught a technique where you kind of try to derive the question that you're seeking to discuss together. And there's a process whereby with time you explore that question with the group and make sure that everyone shares an understanding of what it is. But actually, and I've never felt entirely comfortable with that, having the group, having a topic, and then the first thing you do with the group is say, what do you think the question we need to answer here today is a really powerful process. Like you say, you might get 40 different questions, but that in itself is really helpful for everyone to see.
It's revealing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I knew what this was about, and so therefore, why do we even need the workshop? We can just do this. Here's the answer.
Yeah. It helps overcome that. Why am I even here? I know what we need to do. I just need to influence everyone to understand what I'm trying to get at here.
Yes. So making visible, and this is a strategy that this would be some of my advice and practice. Making the complexity visible helps us see. It doesn't make me necessarily let go of my position, but it helps me see it in a bit more context, and ultimately, perhaps it opens me up to a bit more listening and curiosity. So I would use those in sequence, which is get the questions out. We're all seeing it a little differently, and then practice curiosity across those boundaries, help us explore. And it goes, I think, Peter, to your orange one there, have strong position holders share their position and have everyone in the room share a little of their understanding of the problem. And that's going to get us closer to a solution than we were when we walked in, I'm sure of it. And whether it's the circle framework sort of approach, I think it's a process to share and hear each other around how we are seeing the problem is a really important part. Feel free to dive in if you've got anything to contribute on any of that. I think there's a couple here in blue. Establish a common language to communicate effectively. So someone want to talk to me about that one. What does that look like? What does that mean in this context?
Yeah, Stuart, thanks. I popped that one in. I think in the context of if we're trying to get to understanding issues and what is the core issue, it's also important to have effective communication between the parties in the room so that when we mention a terminology, for example, we're all on the same page what the terminology is. Because if we're adding more confusion to the problem and we're not really going to be able to figure out what is the issue, particularly if the issue has different layers to it, right? And you're talking about this from this layer, I'm talking from this perspective.
So I'm interested in how. Do you know, have you got thoughts about how?
So I think, for example, just having a background paper where you set out some really key, just glossary, for example, would just kind of get some of the basics out of the way.
That's interesting. Yes, absolutely do that. That can be really helpful, can't it? And again, I think a key is listening across the boundaries, and sometimes some little tools can be helpful. Just some, I've got a tool that I sometimes use. It has some prompt questions. When you said that, what did you mean? So just to help people find ways to ask questions of each other to help mutual understanding and build exactly that common language. I didn't understand what you said, or I might be making some assumptions about what you mean there. Help me understand that. Is this right, my assumption? So all of those little processes that help us unpack and test what we're thinking and help me understand what you say when you're saying those words can be really useful. And yes, that starting document, that briefing document, that briefing paper can be a really useful part of doing that. I think it's in and of itself, it's insufficient because we do read things differently and make assumptions about the meanings of words. So the conversation and the questioning is critical there. There's, again, many of you have heard me talk about this before. Conversations build the relationship. The relationship allows the transaction. And I think that's relevant all here, that if we're trying to change people's minds We're trying to get them to open up. We're trying to get to a solution. The conversation allows the relationship, builds the listening, builds the trust, and there we can go to the hard places which we might not have been able to go to previous. So I use that as a little, that equation's in my head all the time. We might just dive into one more here. Facilitator down the bottom right takes hybrid approach of group and offline sessions. So can someone tell me a little more about that one? Someone might be.
Yeah, it's my. Yeah, I did that too. So yeah, no, I think same thing, because if you're under time pressure, then you probably sometimes need to figure ways to be able to use a group conversation, and also others, like maybe, like I said, even a background paper, to just get some of the one-on-ones out the way first, and then you can just zero in on those that need further clarification.
Yes. Yes.
Or sometimes, if it's a more complex thing, then you might have to have an offline session with one or two persons who are asking, really technical stuff. So
yes, there is always offline, and I think that might have been Dev's comment there in purple. Process is never ending. Point out end of the workshop, the actionable items, and room for more. Am I right in thinking that was yours, Dev? And
no, that's not mine.
Oh, okay, there you go. I don't know why I just saw your name on it as it was being written, but
I agree with
that. Very good.
So what I was just saying before in the group was that I believe in you not always be able to tackle everything everyone wants to be tackled in the room. So I said, personally, I think it's a good idea to anyways go to, at the end, to actionable steps, what we're going to do next, who's responsible, and then get the commitment and say, hey, is there still anything open? Is everyone happy with what came out? And if not, it's a topic to be then tackled again, either by us or either by one of the people within the company, because I also, as a consultant, I believe I help them to get there, but then eventually they have to take it on anyways by themselves. So there has to be anyone responsible. So I think there's always room and always time to get back to that topic that might have not been solved yet.
Yes, look, I completely agree with that. At this facilitation I did last week, the brief was, we want you ultimately to finalize the mission and the vision for this organization, which seems to me completely the wrong approach. I'm the person in the room with the least stake and the least investment in their mission and vision. It seems much more sensible that this is your work, this is your mission, your vision, and we agreed at the end of the workshop that you've got work to do. I'll help you, but it's your work. It can't be my work. This is your organization. So yes, absolutely. There is always more to do. And I think one of the things, I might just pop up a few of my own here that feel relevant, is the hypotheses. So what do I mean by that? That sometimes on complex issues, making it visible that we don't have to come out of here with the big answer on this big complex problem. Like, I've done a lot of work in managing catchments, and managing catchments is, how long's a piece of string? But what we can very clearly come out of our sessions with is some ideas to try, some steps we can take, some actions that are, that are implementable in the short term and feel achievable and doable. They're not necessarily the answer. So even if we continue to hold our strong position about the answer, well, that's okay. But let's do this and this and this together, and that might free us up and give us some opportunity. I have found that just making it okay for people to take small steps together, rather than always forcing ourselves to come out with the solution, is actually quite freeing, and it's actually more realistic in many contexts. Let's just try these things together, and we can keep coming back to this and keep learning and keep applying and keep taking actions. So it's a different frame, and in some cases it can be a really useful frame. So they're hypotheses and actions to take out there. Another one might be co-design, and it's sort of, we've touched on it, but knowing, and this speaks most to the, what do we need to tackle here? What are the right issues? Well, I try always to have these conversations with the client. You know, what is feeling relevant? What would success look like if we walk out of that workshop? And do that prior, and then take that sense in all the way through the workshop. What do you think we need to do now, folks? What's the most important conversation right now, having done that? And just sharing accountability all the time with the group for their responsibility to have the conversation that matters about the issues that matter. So don't always think that it's up to me as the facilitator or the person designing this to have all those answers all the time. It's, well, this is your conversation, folks. What feels relevant and important? What do we need to do? We've got an hour. You know, that's a useful kind of mindset to bring in. We've talked about clarity on the problem, and this is a biggie, and it's a biggie for both of these issues: strongly held positions, as we've talked about, and knowing what we need to focus on. It's, what's the dilemma, folks? What is the question? Before we dive into solutions, it's really sitting there with the problem. What is the problem we most need to do to tackle here? And what does that mean? How does that feel? Tell us, let's share that. Let's learn about the problem before diving into solution. And that I have found to be a really useful thing. Other ones I used last week, of course, and this is about, it's relevant for both. Strongly held positions, or getting to the thing, is small group work. You know, you can't overestimate the value of breaking people up into small conversations so they can hear each other and have conversations. Now, you all know that it's pretty fundamental, but you know, breakouts and that sort of thing, it's really valuable in ensuring people listen to each other, and that the one strongly held position doesn't dominate. It also allows us to do work together, doesn't it? You know, I had to do this in parallel last week in my workshop. We were running out of time. We had mission, we had vision. So I split the room. This side tackle this set of issues, this side tackle this set of issues. And, you know, it really worked to unlock us and free us up. We weren't all wading through the same sort of stuff. It really freed us up to make progress and then share. And because we were then working in small groups, it was easy to do in any case. And the other thing I learned or did last week was Mentimeter, not Mentimeter, you know, the online voting thing. And these sorts of tools, again, for both of these issues, strongly held positions, I might be the person in the room who's got strongly held position that this is the answer, and we all think that way. But if we get it up on screen and do a quick poll or a quick vote or ranking or prioritizing, I might find that, oh, actually, I don't represent the room. And isn't that interesting? And it might help me let go of that. And in terms of the issues, you know, questions, outputs, it's a really quick and efficient way, isn't it, to make progress and identify perhaps what it is that we most need to work on. I did that last week again with vision and mission. We came up with a bunch of words. So what are the key words? What are the key things we need to take forward into our next conversation? And it was a nice, efficient way to keep that going. Oh, look at that. It's just about time. Would anyone want to add anything to all of those things, any of that? Any questions or thoughts or comments?
The only thing, when you're talking about Mentimeter, which is one way to do it online, I think what I like to do is having people stand up and line up, especially after they've been sitting in a workshop, and then do like this commitment, or are we all at the same understanding? Everyone who's there goes right. Everyone who's doesn't understand, who's not agreeing at all, goes to the left, and everyone and then just put yourselves in the middle so we can actually see where you're standing. And that actually, I think that's a nice way to do that too.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I actually did it about 4 times in the workshop last week, both as ways forward, a bit of drafting of vision. So, where are we on that? Do we like that? Can we live with it? Do we support it? Do we love it? Do we hate it? Line up. And the same on the mission. Then again, at the end of the day, was how valuable has our day been together? And yeah, so I quite agree that spectrum walk, or that line-up approach, just to get some instant in-the-moment feedback, is terrific. And you can take the photo, you can send it to the client, here's where you all were. Highly valuable for these things. And it does help provide everyone feedback in the moment about the key issues, or about what's important to us here. We can line up around any of those. All right. Anything to add, folks, before I send you on your way? Goes fast, isn't it? So I've got some little frameworks that I will share. And if there is anything, Cindy, like the circle stuff that you might like to share, or any other processes that any of you like to use, then that would be terrific. And I will see you next week. Just before we go, I must touch on what we'll do next week. So we've done these 2 in orange. Can I suggest that we'll tackle maybe online and hybrid next week? Does that make sense? We've got sort of 3 sessions left. What if we do online, facilitation techniques, and balancing power differentials? And we'll start next week with online. We're okay with that? Okay. All right, very good. I'll ask the question again in email, and if you have other opinions, that's fine too. Okay, everyone, thank you again for your attention, and I'll see you next
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Stuart.
Thanks.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.